Oh, that's right. Ernie is introducing me. Take it away, Ernie. No.
Is it on? Green light. Good afternoon, or good morning, I guess.
Better still be morning.
You better, yes. This is Carl. Does anybody not know Carl? Okay. Does anybody not know what he's going to talk about today? This is the follow-up to his the presentation that he made last year about
Year and a half.
the brain health study that he's involved in, and it's approaching its conclusion. So you're going to give an update.
Yes.
And welcome, Carl.
Thank you very much. It is wonderful to be back. Just a personal note, when I first retired, Tris and I came here first by, you remember the TV and so forth like that, and then on into the congregation. You all welcomed us so wonderfully, and Tris was delighted to get to be involved. So Pastor Jill, I know what you're saying when you're saying it's a loving, a wonderful group. Appreciate it very much. The Lord called me back to my old parish for what was going to be 2 or 3 months, ended up being almost a year. And then I decided, okay, that's enough. That's not healthy anymore. And it was a good thing as the Lord leads. As I finished up with that last May, Tris developed a health condition, and I'll get into that at the end. And so we've been pretty much in hospitals and doctors and things like that since that time. I have been preaching around, as Pastor Jill could tell you. A wonderful job. Thank you so much for being here. And it's been a blessing, but a challenging time. But that's not what I'm here for. What I'm here for is because the committee on wellness, road to wellness, I think, way to wellness, ways to wellness. Asked me when I first got into this program on brain health to present, and that was almost 2 years ago. And now, in 2 months, I will be done. So it's an exciting time, and I've got a lot to share, so you'll have to raise your hand, or some will just leave when they get hungry, because I can go on for a long time. But to start out, so we all get on the same page, I want you to be thinking right now, consider those you love, consider those you know, consider yourself. Now, if you have no concerns for any of those people or yourself as to how your brain is working at this time and how it might be working in the future, if you have no concerns about that, then raise your hand. Yeah. Says it all, doesn't it? Not only is dementia and Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia, a tremendous challenge, but just the concern about it is a tremendous challenge. And so the Alzheimer's Association has begun a study, and in this sheet I gave you that starts out report on my participation, you'll get most of the information I'm going to go over because there's a lot of detail and you might be interested in sharing it with others or looking at it some more. But they started a study, and it's the fancy name, I can't ever remember it, the U.S. Study to Protect Brain Health Through Lifestyle Intervention to Reduce Risk. And somehow they tortured U.S. Pointer out of that. But that's what it's called, U.S. Pointer. And it is patterned after a study that was in Finland for 2 years. And during that time, it was the same basic study. And the idea is, can changing lifestyle in a number of ways make a difference for brain health? Very simple premise, or hypothesis, I guess is what you call it. And so in Finland, they got a number of people together and went through this study where people would, for a 2-year period, change a number of lifestyle things that they were doing and not doing. And it, at the end of the study, showed about a 40% decline in cognitive function loss. In other words, about 40% better for these folks who went through this study than the control group. And so that's rather amazing. That's a lot. And it got everybody's attention. And so the Alzheimer's Association, as you know, a very reputable group, decided to try this in the United States. Because Finland is sort of it's a different diet, it's a different group of people. And so they got together. All together, we are 2,111 people throughout the United States. We're in different centers. And as you'll see there, it's in Sacramento. UC Davis is running this part. And then Chicago, Illinois, Houston, Texas, Providence, Rhode Island, and Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so the idea is to get different, how would you say, kinds of people, different ethnic groups, different geographies, and of course along with that, different diets and so forth, and then to go through this 2-year study to see basically the same thing. Can a multifaceted lifestyle change make a difference for preserving cognitive function? Can it help us with our brain function? No drugs involved. There are drugs that are being studied and some are being used, and that's wonderful. But as you know, they're hideously expensive, and how they work and whether they work, that's all a lot unknown. So this only has to do with lifestyle. It's garnered such excitement that you'll see at the end of that top section that there are now studies either planned or started, the same ones, because there's going to be an attempt to share data and share reporting. There's one in China, one in Singapore, Australia, Central and South America, Canada, India, Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia. It's a worldwide concern. This is not just one or two countries that's concerned about this, it's worldwide. And so all these results and so forth will be shared through what's going to be www/finger, which was the name of the Finger report. And that then will hopefully, before too long, develop a worldwide dementia assistance, or however you want to put it, prevention is probably a better word, dementia prevention group. And there's a lot of work toward that because there's a lot of concern about it. And it's making a real difference if we are looking at our lifestyles and how we might change them to help preserve our brain function. In order to get to the study, I had to be between 60 years and 79. I was almost 72 when I entered the study. I had to have a number of problems. They didn't want all you healthy people who are already doing it. I had to have family, and I do have family members who have challenged with dementia. Had to not eat according to the way they were looking for me to eat, and boy, did I never not. I had to not exercise a lot, and I didn't. And so these kind of risk factors is what they were looking for, because obviously they want to see if it can make a difference. And so they split us up into two groups. One is what you might consider a control group. They don't meet together much at all. They aren't given much information because they will be the ones to be the control, or they're getting, in essence, the placebo. And then there are those of us who are in very structured groups. And I got a kick out of Dave talking about my brain, excuse me for a moment, because these are pretty much it. These are the class materials that I've received over the last 2 years. We delve into subjects I didn't even know they existed and go over things quite intensely. And I'll have these up here. I'll take them on up to the potluck if you want to see any of them. But it is interesting, a lot of the different areas that we've been looking at and considering. For the first 4 months, we met once a week. I was in a group of 13 participants, and it was intense from the beginning. You could just forget about leaving anything private because it didn't work that way. Because the idea is how can we help each other, and so we really got to know each other. We have an interventionist and a facilitator, and the interventionist is the one who intervenes to make sure that we are following the program, because otherwise the results aren't as good as they might be. Then for months 5 and 6, we met twice a month or every other week. And then after that, month 7 through month 24, which will happen on December 3rd, we met once a month. And in between times, the interventionist would call, get some personal attention. And we got, I'll show you, although you can't see it very well, we continually got these reports. I'll get it. We got these reports that show every indication you can imagine as to what you're doing and what you're not doing and how it's going, because that's all data points, and data points is what they're after. Because now as we finish, and the program does complete pretty much with the end of this year, study will then be worked and published. Unfortunately, I can't tell you at this point just what it's going to show. There's good solid indications that it's going to show a big difference in brain function, but that's not clear until all the data has been collected. Publishing should begin at the middle of next year, and I'll make sure you know when that is and where it is. So well, there you go. That's fine. Yes?
Did they pay you to be in this study?
No. And yes. For certain things, I will get Target gift cards, and they're like $50 or something.
Can you buy donuts with those?
Yeah. No. Yes. No. Yeah. Yeah, right. I can buy them and smell them, and I do that sometimes, is smell stuff.
What can you buy?
Oh, I'll go through that. Yeah, in great detail. But there are 4 areas that we have gone over and been monitored on very carefully. And so what happens is we have all of this, and then every 6 months we have an extensive blood draw. And it's something, I don't know where my blood is, but it'll be someplace for study forever. And that is looked at, and a number of areas are looked at. And I'll have my last one December 6th, and then I will be done with my study. But I can give you a preliminary report, and I can give you some ideas as to how things are going. And that's what I want to do today. To begin with, the first big area that we looked at is food, because the Western diet, as we might call it, it's not supportive of brain function. It really isn't. And big reasons, a lot of saturated fat. And a lot of saturated fat really causes problems with inflammation and so forth. Another big reason, a lot of added sugar. You might be surprised, because we spent like 3 weeks learning to really read food labels, and you'd be surprised what they put sugar in. Added sugar, not just the regular. We can have regular sugar in fruits and so forth, but the added stuff is amazing sometimes. And then salt, of course, that's a real challenge. And then interestingly, and this is somewhat controversial, but there's been so much that has been studied along these lines, we have so much flour and rice and other things that have had the husks and nutrients and grains pulled out of them, so that they're no longer whole grain or whole wheat. And that is a real problem too for our guts. And part of the study is how our guts then relate to our brains. And so when people say they're going with their gut, well, maybe they're going with their brain too. But there's a connection. So those sorts of things are real problems. So what we did is we committed to a diet that would promote brain health. First big thing we eat pretty much every day, green leafy vegetables. By that I mean spinach, romaine lettuce, things like that, kale, all that sort of stuff. And then other vegetables pretty much every day. And that, broccoli and things like that are the best, but pretty much any vegetable is okay. Make sure to get those. That's a whole other area. Yes, we have to have at least 3 servings of beans every week. Oh, beets. Oh, yeah, beets are wonderful. Any earth vegetable. And one has to be careful that the vegetables haven't been buttered. As you know, you'll buy vegetables sometimes and you put butter all over it. Well, guess what? Saturated fat is all over butter. We are allowed 1 pat of butter a day. I don't even have butter. It's not worth it. I have Smart Balance, but it's something else. So the vegetable is very important. And then we also have to have berries. And although a number of fruits are good, it's found that berries, especially the skin, really helps with the brain function. I can go into great detail if you ask me, but I'm not going to go over it now. It just helps with brain function. And then it was beans is what I heard. We have beans because they also help with brain function and provide protein and so forth. And then we'll have fish, especially fatty fish, like salmon and so forth, with the omega-3s and things like that. And then we'll have, and this has been one of the great challenges, but I'm used to it now, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil every day. And this is, as you might get an idea, this is not a low-calorie diet. It's just a different diet. And there's more and more research that there is a block between the blood and the brain that it's got to be protected so that things don't get into the brain that aren't any good. That's a very simple explanation of a complicated thing. But extra virgin olive oil really helps with that. And so we have that. We also have poultry, but it needs to be boneless, skinless, white turkey or chicken. If you're having chicken wings with all the sauce on it, you'd be surprised how much saturated fat you're having. And then we also have, somebody had the food list with them.
We passed it out to everybody.
Well, somebody tell me what's the other thing.
Paper with all the pictures of food that, did you guys, nuts?
Nuts, that's right, nuts. This is my personal downfall because we're supposed to have 5 ounces of nuts, and I keep thinking that means 5 ounces a day, not a week. Because as you know, there's a lot of calorie in nuts, but a lot of really good fat in nuts. So,
Just 5 ounces, small.
yeah, it's pretty small. About it, yeah.
And do peanuts count?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, you can go into what are the best, but honestly, the diet typically is so bad that pretty much any of these things are good. What you have to watch with nuts, other than the calories, is the salt, because a lot of the nuts are heavily salted, so I make sure to get lightly salted. And so that's basically been my diet for the last 2 years. As some of you have noticed, I have lost weight, but it's because I was eating so poorly and using the foods that are to be limited. So, of course, the first one is sweets, to not have many of those. Butter, as I said, or margarine, because that also has saturated fat. And then getting into red or processed meat. And the more marbled, the worse. And so I have to limit those. And the biggest limitation is on fried food, because that inflames everything. And yes,
When you say limited,
yes,
that means to me you could have something.
yes. One of the things about this diet is a realization that they say you can't ever have any of this stuff. Nobody's going to ever be on it. And so it's limited. And some of it you can have more than others. For example, I can have a decent amount of red meat, 3 or 4 servings a week, I think, but not a lot. Fried foods, just 1 serving. Cheese, whole cheese. that, again, that was one of the tough ones to give up, but now it's okay. Because that's got a lot of saturated fat as well. You'd just be amazed at what and the saturated fat is just a real big problem. And so I was eating a lot of that stuff in great abundance, or as we used to say, mass consumption. And so giving that stuff up did more to have me lose weight than any of the other things that were actually the positive things. But
Was it hard for you to give up sweetened drinks or something like that?
yes,
Yeah.
it was difficult. And alcohol, it's really out. There's a lot of controversy about alcohol, but most folks say now it doesn't really support brain health. So why do we drink it? So I'm sure some is okay, but yeah, things like that. Yeah, it is. You know, you just get used to it. Yes, Bruce.
So did you actually take 2 spoonfuls of like
Oh, yeah.
No.
How did you do the
No, I have done that when in an absolute fix, but usually what I'll do is I'll have a spinach or a romaine salad with my evening meal, put 2 tablespoons of olive oil on it, put some balsamic vinegar on it. Tastes great. And that's one of the things I've learned to do is put things together so they are palatable as well. You learn a lot of these things because you got to get the points. There's so many points you can get if you toe the line. And so that's what I usually do. Sometimes I'll put it on whole wheat toast, the olive oil, and again, a little balsamic. You know, you'll get that like at a fancy restaurant and let it soak in. But yeah, you get used to it. Some of the guys are into olive oil tasting. That doesn't appeal to me.
I know you said the last time that if you use the olive oil for cooking, then you'd be feeding the person.
Yeah, there's controversy about that, but usually it's felt if you change the temperature too much on the olive oil, it changes its chemistry, and so it isn't as effective. But at the same time, when I saute now, I will saute usually with olive oil and just be careful about not heating it up too much. And that's good. Because some of these oils you'll get are just hideous. And so you got to be really careful if you are looking at these things. So, yes?
Other whole fruits like apples, bananas.
Neutral. Neutral. It's fine to have them, and I do, but they're not researched in such a way to promote brain health. And this whole thing is about brain health. So I can have eggs, I can have potatoes. If they're purple potatoes, I get to count them as a vegetable. If they're not purple, I don't. You know, so there's a lot of these little different things. So there's a lot of things I can eat, but I just have to watch it and be careful. So it's a little bit different diet than the Mediterranean diet or the DASH diet, but it's the same basic idea as those 2 diets. Yes?
You may have mentioned this before, but besides the blood draw every 6 months, how have you been monitored?
I take my blood pressure weekly. I have to, in the meetings, then show that I am being careful as far as stress and exercise by the way I have my demeanor. It's very personal. But the actual scientific monitoring is happening every 6 months through the blood draws. But all the data points come, as I mentioned, I have a Fitbit, and that takes all of this data as far as what exercise I'm doing and how my heart is doing. And as you know, these things tell you more than you want to know. So that goes on. So I guess that's a better answer to your question is 24/7. Yeah, it's by the Pointer researchers. They have a database that they keep. So.
No ankle bracelet.
Say what?
No ankle bracelet. You get to take that off in December. Right?
December 4th, I'll take a sledgehammer to it. Because it all comes back to me on this stupid thing. How many active minutes I had and all these kind of things. Oh, my God. So it's quite something. So that's the monitoring. But a lot of it happens through interview, I guess is a good way to put it. All right. That's the first big area. The next big area is physical exercise, and this is again where the monitoring comes in. And I am to have at least 30 minutes a week of physical exercise that is aerobic. And by that means you get your heart rate up to 70-80% of your max heart rate for 30 minutes. I do that through walking and jogging. I'll jog a bit and walk a bit, and it works, and I get my time in. The dog loves it. That I will have to keep doing. Some of the stuff I might give up, but I can't give that up because she just loves it. Yes, Tom?
You do that once a week?
No, 4 times a week, 30 minutes a time.
What? I said once a week.
Oh, well, no, what I meant was 4 times a week, 30 minutes a time for at least 120 minutes of aerobic exercise. And sometimes when the weather's been real bad, I've used an exercise bike. You can do any number. They don't tell us how we do it. They just say you got to do it. And then I will do about 20 minutes twice a week of balance and stretch exercise. Because balance has been shown to make a real difference for brain function and brain health. And so I used to be able to hold my leg up like this for maybe 10 seconds. Boy, I can keep talking and I can keep going. I can get in yoga positions and all kind of stuff, you learn. So I won't show off too much, but yeah, a lot of balance exercises. Yes.
Interesting about balance. If you have a smartwatch, as I do, and there's a program that comes with it on heart. And if you've never seen what's in there, it's amazing. The other day, I don't know how it's in there, all of a sudden it showed balance and your propensity for falling.
Right.
Because as your balance is worse, your chance of falling.
Right.
And as we get older, that's our worst enemy, right?
Well, it's one of them. I've learned there's a lot of worst enemies as we get older. But yes, balance is very important. But the nice thing is, over the last 2 years, it's made a world of difference. It can be changed. So don't think, I can't do it anymore. No, you can. You just have to do like anything, work hard at it. And then I spend 30, yes, Pat.
Yeah. Have the matter of balance class that we took a couple of years ago now, has that been helpful
Yes.
at all for you?
Yes, very, very much was. Yes.
A number of us participated.
Yes, that's very well done, and I was able to use some of those things as I got more intensely into balance. So, yeah, all of that helps. And then I spend 30 minutes twice a week doing strength exercises. And that I use a resistance band for those. People can get in as much as they want, but I find that works very well. And for both balance and strength, I use YouTube channels. And you can get in there, and they got everybody. I use Meredith, who's one of the senior helpers with that, but it's easy to find those things. And it's felt that that facet of lifestyle change can make a big difference for brain health as well. Because for one thing, of course, it keeps the brain moving. But one of the big things that has been found is that you've got to get oxygen to the brain. It wants a lot of oxygen. And it doesn't get up there unless you're exercising. And sedentary life really just, it rots the brain away. Because it's an organ. And that's one of the things we've learned is the brain is not this magical thing that you can't do anything with. It's an organ. You can do a lot with it. You can't transplant it and so forth, at least not yet. But it is an organ and can be treated well, and exercise really helps that. So those are 2 of the facets. And the third one you'll see is cognitive exercise. Use it or lose it. And that is really true. If you ever learned a language and then didn't use it, you know what happens. In college, I was a classical literature major, and boy, I knew Greek and Latin really pretty well. And that was a lot of years ago. But I do have a Rudyard Kipling quote that says, "A gentleman need only to have forgotten Greek." Yeah. So at any rate, uh, that is vitally important, and research shows that very strongly, that to train the brain, and that's different from brain games, but to train the brain is really important. So what I use, as I've indicated here, is a web-based program. It's called Brain HQ, and it's available to anybody. You can get on the web and take a look at it if you're interested. And it's been carefully researched to do training in different ways so that you can hear, perceive, see, perceive, and all those kind of things more clearly and better. So I'll have all kind of exercises. One I was working on yesterday was where they will give two syllables, et and ek. And you're supposed to say which one it is. But after a while, you begin to hear. And then another one, this one is a killer, where they will have on the one side, it'll be Rochambeau with hands, and then on the other side with objects, the actual rock or scissors. And you got to say which one is less and which one is more. And so you've got to always be thinking that way. And then they'll just have all kind of training exercises like this so that the brain gets trained better and is used. And you can't beat it because you get hooked up with an algorithm and it always makes it harder. But I have really noticed a big difference doing it. I spend approximately 30 to 45 minutes 3 times a week with that. So it's a significant amount of time, and it really matters.
Do you do that all in one session, like a half-hour session?
Half an hour to 45 minutes. It's 10 levels. They go by levels. But yeah, so it's all those kind of things. And it is really interesting, just if you be curious. A lot of different kind of exercises. And then other things as well. And I keep track of these things. Everything from jigsaw puzzles to this presentation to anything I'm doing where I've got to use my brain. I'm stimulating it, singing, learning new music. Like today was a good stimulation. Any of those kind of things. I keep track of those, and then that goes to the pointer database as well. And the one thing they do say, and it is interesting, that if you do one thing, like you always do crossword puzzles, that's wonderful, but not adequate to preserve brain function, because that's sort of a misunderstanding. Because what happens is your brain gets used to it. And like it or not, your brain likes to be challenged. So something like learning a new language, it loves that. Anything that challenges you. Trying to sing the hymns in an Episcopal church when they sing all different hymns and they sing them in all different way. Oh, goodness. That was a good challenge. But yes.
Our trainer at where we live said, for brain stimulation and everything, jigsaw puzzles.
They're wonderful.
Very best.
They're just great. But jigsaw puzzles. But again, if that's the only thing you do, then it's not as good as it can be, but still that's good. So one of the challenges that we do, and we wonder how this dementia has gotten so bad, we'll put people in these homes and they sit around all day not talking or doing anything. Well, what do you think? And then for the meals, I've been to some of these places, and boy, they got more gourmet than I got, and a lot of it is not healthy food. And we wonder, well, why are they going downhill? Surprise. Yeah, and so this is going to be a lot of stuff societally we're going to have to come to terms with, or not, but at least this study is showing that it's a reality. And then the fourth big thing is health monitoring, and that gets into what you were saying, Keith. Again, we have the group sessions. We learn a lot about stress reduction. We learn a lot about mindfulness. We get a better sense of how to improve our health status. So when I take my blood pressure, I do breathing exercises, and I got of course this Fitbit, and if my heart rate's too high, I just stop, and all kind of things. It's a different way of looking at things. And so I give you a bit of a report, but please don't think I'm anything special. Just see that these kind of things can make a difference. When I started this study in October 2022, I weighed 232.6 pounds. And after a year, my weight was 170.4. So it really, and again, the trouble is, and one of the reasons I don't want to say I'm all that is because for some it's easier to lose weight than for others. And they never talk about weight loss or weight gain in this study because people, what's understood more is there's folks who have a propensity toward obesity and it's just hard for them. Others can lose weight. And I'm one of those folks that if I watch my P's and Q's, I can lose weight. So, but it's wonderful. I'm currently between 180 and 185 because my body and I have had quite discussions. I don't know if you ever lost weight and then kept from putting it back on, but that's the biggest challenge is you just have to work it, and exercise helps with that. And then this is an interesting one from a lot of these exercises that I do. My resting heart rate, which is when I'm just restful, it was at 67 beats per minute when I started. Now it's 55. And so it really can make a difference, and this helps with your brain. It likes that. And then I won't go into the details. I've got them here if you want them, but my cholesterol levels have improved significantly. And then my triglycerides, which is a real problem, and especially looks at fat, it's gone from 187 to 59. I know. It's just, it's really, it's amazing what happens. And honestly, now I've been in this long enough that I'll do something like look at a Carl's Jr. commercial and it's like pornography to me. Of course, sometimes it is pornography, but it's just how many patties and how much cheese and how much bacon and oh my God, you're killing. So anyway. So, and as I say, I've undergone extensive cognitive tests, and these are quite extensive. Every year, it's 2 days, and they're long days. And I go through all kind of testing, everything from the old clock, making a clock, to getting to tell us a short story, and then I've got to repeat that. And then a while later, I got to repeat it again. Then a while later, I got to repeat it again. And then they give me numbers, and it starts out with like 4 digits, and then it'll go on up to 10. But other than just the numbers, I've got to then put them in order or reverse them, or all these kind of crazy things. It's just amazing. But all of this is different ways to see the executive function. Well, I won't get into all that unless you want, but it's to see how the brain is working. And the hope is that going through this program then will help forestall cognitive decline. The goal is not, to make these super brilliant people. I still can't play violin like Alex does or anything like that, nor will I ever be able to. But it's to keep from having this hideous decline that doesn't need really to happen. Yes?
People are really, though, predisposed toward dementia.
Some are, yes. And and you got to say, whenever you get into something like this, you can't change people's genetics, things like that. But this didn't used to be such a worldwide problem that it is now. There are reasons for that other than genetics. So there's some who are going to have Alzheimer's no matter what they did or didn't do. So like my brother-in-law, who's had heart problems ever, about heart problems, he would be like 140 pounds, and he exercised everything, but he had a family history and so forth. So this isn't a cure-all, but for many people it can be a help. That's what the Alzheimer's Association is trying to get at. It's like diabetes. Another one like this, where there are things you can do, but there are some who are just going to have trouble no matter what. So you've got to realize that. Yeah. Yes?
Maybe, Carl, you could talk about why you decided to get into this study and how it's going and how you feel and how, I think I heard you say in a conversation, you want to finish well.
Yes, I do. Yes, well, I got into the study for several reasons. One, because I was requested to do that. I got a postcard that asked me if I'd be interested from UC Davis. And then as I thought about it, I really, you know those old missionary terms, you feel a burden for something? Yeah, I really felt a burden for it because I've worked through my ministry. I don't know, Pastor Jill, I'm sure you've dealt with this. Families where there's Alzheimer's and some forms of dementia, it's hard. It's hard for the person, it's hard for the family, it's hard for everybody. And I thought, if I can do anything to help with this, that is something I can do and something I really want to do. And I've always tried to keep that first and foremost. And boy, the facilitator is really hard on that because somebody will start and say, well, I really don't care, I feel fine. And then she'll just say, well, this really isn't about you, is it? And that's what we have to always remember for these kind of things. So I got into that, and it has, as I'll get into when I explain about Triss's situation, it's been a real blessing for me because I've had so much more energy and so much ability to think through difficult times and how to handle them and how to deal with them. Like about 2:30 last night, Triss had a situation and I need to deal with it. And you know, at 2:30 in the morning, it's kind of hard to think. Well, I was able to, I've learned techniques, slow down, think about what can you do, what needs to be done. And boy, that stuff's practical help. And I think, so it's more than just not going goofy, as they say. And then I want to finish well because it's going to be important for the study. Very important to show what difference this can make. And as you know, I'm one who makes a commitment. I'm going to keep that commitment. So, yes.
Well, it's obvious you put a lot of work into this.
Yes.
And you think you continue with it?
I don't know.
The study is over?
Well, see, what happens when the study is over, I can become what's called an alumni, and I get tested every year, but I don't go to groups and so forth. So I'll decide on that. There'll be parts that most certainly I will keep going. The exercise, I think, for sure. I'm not so sure about these Brain HQ brain trainings. They just get brutal. It's one of those things where I know I should, but I don't know if I will. And then the diet, my diet's changed. I mean, there's just no two ways about that when I look at a lot of stuff. And it happens if you really make these kind of shifts. If you've lived in other countries, you know, you change what you desire because there's not stuff available and you just go crazy worrying about it. So that's changed. And then the other techniques. Oh, those kind of.
Continue with the diet.
Yes.
Or are you gonna?
I might fudge a little. I might have some actual cheddar cheese or something. But the biggest thing is will not be having to keep track. Every night I have to put in all the exercise I've done, all the food I've eaten, all the brain training. I mean, it's just, that I won't miss. So parts of it I will.
So Carl, if we see you in Carl's Jr. more than once a week.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yes, Bruce.
Oh, I just had two things. Well, the second one that I remember because I've already forgotten. You mentioned the other. Yeah. I know. I need to get your study. The other countries, are they started yet? Are you going to get those results?
Some have started, some are planning. The attempt is to make the studies as, well, I'm afraid you'll have to. It's because it's just beginning. Really, to even think about the brain as something you can affect is new. It's like not that many years ago then we used to say, oh, you got a bad heart. And that was it. Now, a whole lot more is understood. And it's the same now with the brain, where people aren't going to just say, well, you can't do anything about it, hope you don't have problems. There's a lot you can do. But that's just really getting going at that level. So eventually, I'm hoping, you know, I would say 5 or 10 years, it'll be a worldwide thing that really is developing it. Yes?
The second was there are people who are gone. They don't know who they are.
Right.
Is this study trying to help them, or is it people who still know what's going on?
This study is not for folks who already are in severe cases. Although it won't hurt, it's, who's to say, but none of this is so far clinically shown to bring anybody back, as you might say. If you've got a serious problem, you've got that problem. It's hard to undo it. Yes?
Well, that same thing has been true, unfortunately, with pharmaceuticals. They haven't come up with anything to benefit. You maybe retard the decline
Right.
of the problem, but you're not going to improve the situation.
But usually helping to stop it helps. So it can make a difference no matter what. And you know how even when people are challenged with a rather advanced Alzheimer's, they can still have lucid days. And so things like this can help there be more lucid days. And then there are also studies, and I've got ancillary studies that are listed here, and I'm in 4. So they know my body better than I do. There is a belief now more and more that lifestyle can make a big difference for how things develop. Because there have been some groups, there's a very famous group of nuns who have donated their brains basically when they die. So the researchers are delighted they can get into this. And what they're finding is, because of their lifestyle and the way they are, several of them should have Alzheimer's, according to what's in their brain, the amyloid clusters and the tau proteins, but they don't. I mean, it's not shown. And so what's being thought perhaps is this lifestyle does make a big difference to forestall things. So who's to say? I can't make conclusive things about anything, not even the results of this study yet, but I sure will let you know as soon as it is. So one of the things I do is get annual brain scans, and so it's an MRI and a PET scan. I mean, they go through it all, and so that's checking to see if there's anything there, any amyloid clusters, tau proteins, other things, and if that changes, and so forth. So they really want to look into that. And then one that's really interesting is the neurovascular study, and that's where they're putting all these things, they're testing all your veins, how they're working and everything like that, because blood flow is vitally important for the brain, and if you can get your blood flowing well, then that really is a help. And one of the things that really blew me away was in January 2023, I had vessels, my blood vessels were of a typical man 58.79 years old. I thought, well, that's pretty good. But in November of 2023, close to a year later, it was of a typical man 49.24 years old. So the blood flow in the vessels and the suppleness of the vessels has really improved. So, that's going to help in pretty much any case. And I can tell you a lot of techniques to help you with your individual forgetting of things and so forth, and having trouble with finding. One of the greatest things, I just tell you one, is when you're thinking you need to do something, you point it out and say it, like potluck. Then you'll remember to go to the potluck than to just rather go home. Or better yet, get my dish for the potluck. Because it gets in the hippocampus. But again, that's other stuff.
So you're saying you were learning strategies then?
That's exactly right. Yeah, there are strategies. And when they're used, then they help develop the brain function and preserve the brain function. And another one is a sleep study, because you might have heard sleep and brain health, they work together. And more studies are saying the brain recircuits every night. It does a dump of the stuff. I mean, that's the way they put it. It dumps out that stuff that's not needed, because it really can only hold so much, and then gets ready for the next stuff. And if you don't sleep well or you're sleep deprived, you can't think straight. That's what they want. The brain fog, all that kind of stuff. Yes. Very important. Very important. And sleep helps with that. So we've done work on sleeping, but I once a year have this, I have all the hookups and everything for that. And then what I like to call is the poop test. The fancy term is microbiome, because more and more of the studies are showing that what's going on in your gut affects what's going on in your brain, and that they somehow communicate. And a lot of this stuff is just so new that people don't completely understand it, and that's one of the reasons for the study. And so they're checking out my poop to see what it's looking like. So there we are.
Or was the finished study published? Is it?
Yes, yes. If you go for fingers, you go to, and you can just do fingers, brain health, or whatever, study, finger, that'll give you the whole study. And there's a lot that's been published on U.S. Pointer. You can either go through the Alzheimer's website or go directly to U.S. Pointer, and that'll give you stuff. But that's all preliminary because the results haven't been published because they've not been studied yet. But yeah, as they come out, they will be studied. And through the Alzheimer's Association, more and more, I think this is going to become more and more of their push as to what to do, because people can do it. And one of the things I found out, some people have a memorial service and they're getting ready to leave. One of the things I found out is if you are working on it, you're helping yourself and you're helping others. And that's why it's worth doing. All right, then I would end, yes.
I gave this bulletin too, I picked up from a meeting I attended.
Oh, very good. Okay, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that's coming out. And I do have to say, I'm glad you brought that, because I do have to say, there's been studies where there's been one thing done, and often the results aren't that promising. For example, people do aerobic exercise and they wonder why their brain function hasn't improved. Well, it's not enough. Or people have changed their diet and then they wonder why they're, these kind of studies. They have to be done really in a multifaceted way and a very respected way. And that's one of the reasons I got into this one, because I trust the Alzheimer's Association, and they are doing it correctly. And what doctors want, I've learned this through this as well, they want results, study results. They are not going to tell you as a patient to do something if they don't have studies they know. It's like legal precedent and so forth. So they need these things, because if they're going to tell you, I've got some things you could do, they want to know that those things can really, truly, in a proven way, make a difference. Otherwise, it's just the old, well, you need to diet and exercise. Which we've all heard that many times. So this is helpful for the doctors as well who need study results. Down the bottom, I put, I think, important things. Has my life child change been easy? No, it has not. And it continues to be a challenge when there's times when I really don't want to take part, but I can do it with monitoring, support, and encouragement. I can do it. But I've been blessed with those things. So it's a hard thing just to do on your own. Have they made a difference? Well, as I showed, it's made a profound difference in how I'm feeling and my whole mental outlook. And then this is really important. Should you consider trying to do these things without the knowledge, consent, and support of your doctor and family? Definitely not. Tris and I have had many discussions, and she's been wonderful about this. But unless you have family support and your doctor knows what you're doing, it's dangerous, because these are significant changes, and there could be some things you shouldn't be changing that way. You shouldn't be doing that way. So, other than a report on Tris's condition, that's what I have. Are there any other questions that you haven't asked?
You can go first in line for potluck. You're not going to eat anything.
That's right. I won't take it all. Yeah, boy, that's been one of the hard things is potlucks, because I'll look at it. What can I eat? Yes.
Maybe you could update us on her condition.
Yes.
And then say grace.
I'd be delighted to do that.
Because you've got the mic.
I will be delighted to do that. Okay, I finished up at St. Luke's at the end of last April, and as an aside, they are voting today for a new pastor. Yes, right. My prayer is that it looks good. I mean, Pastor Jill is aware of the situation too. It looks real good. So hopefully very soon they'll have a new pastor. It was a hideous situation, but oh, the Lord has seen them through. So as hard as it was to leave here, and it was very difficult, I know it was a thing that was called, because I don't know how well they would have made it. without having some support through a difficult time.
So what have they done for the last year and a half?
I was there till May.
Oh, May of this year?
Yeah, May of this year, and this is, yeah, so it's only been a few months. And that they were able to do. And they were in solid shape. A lot of what I did was cleaning stuff up and getting it going again. And so it was, it was okay. They just had a traumatic experience. And as we all know, congregations go through those, and some get through them and some don't. But I'm delighted to say they're going to make it, and they get a new pastor, and it'll go. But it was in May then, already last Easter, Tris was having a real hard time talking and swallowing. And we knew something was not right. We both had COVID, and we thought, well, maybe that was it, because that'll do everything, but it wasn't right. So she went to her doctor, and turns out she had developed, the technical term is metastasized squamous cell cancer. And it started in her larynx, or voice box, most of you know that, and then has migrated to her lung. So it's quite serious. And she went through radiation, and if you've been through that with any kind of cancer, it's so many days, so long. And that I was able to clear up enough that she can speak now well, and she can swallow now, and those sorts of things. That's good. And now she's in the midst of chemo and immunotherapy. And you know how that drill goes if you've been there. The one she has is she'll get 6 or 7 hours of these infusions. Boy, they got like 5 different bags. And then they'll give her 3 weeks so that she can get well enough to do it again. And she just had her 3rd round on Friday. And God love her. She's a tough cookie, and you know that. And she's got a great attitude. But it's been a real challenge, and she can most certainly covet your prayers and concerns. We don't know what the future holds. The Lord knows that. I don't even pretend to know that. But I pray for healing in the Lord's way and according to His power, because I know that's His will. But it's a tough time for us, and a challenging time. But she is here in spirit. And one of the things she said, and again, it amazes me how the Lord works, because when we went back to St. Luke's, she says, well, I'll go back there with you happily, but I'm staying there. I said, okay, honey. And it's been a blessing, because that's where her people are, and they've been a tremendous blessing, and they're close. I mean, you guys care, but it's 25 miles away is different. So that's been good, but it's just been a hard time. And then being in this study, I thought, okay, well, I needed to have that energy to be able to do this. Because, as you know, caretaking is no piece of cake either. So thank you very much for your concerns. Thank you for listening and your interest. Yeah. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we do thank you so much as you see us through everything in life. We thank you that you're with us in all of our situations. And we ask especially that you would be with Tris, that she would receive the healing that you have for her. We thank you for that so much, especially through these coming days. Help her to be free of the nausea and the other effects that are really challenging her now. Thank you that you are with her in your love and will never let her go. We thank you that you are with so many others about whom we are concerned, or perhaps ourselves. How is our brain doing? Help us to realize there are things we can do, there are changes we can make, and help us to go about talking with our doctors and our families about those and getting in motivational and in helpful groupings to do that. We thank you for the wonderful food we will receive and the great fellowship that is before us. Please bless us and strengthen us with this, that we may be of your service. Be with Pastor Jill, that she finishes well here in a wonderful time of sharing, and Pastor Gabi gets back refreshed and renewed and ready to lead Advent forward to new heights and new ways. But thank you more than anything that this church is a solid church, people looking to you to follow your way and to serve in your kingdom. Bless and strengthen them in that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Certainly. Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a challenge.